Hey everybody, welcome to an exciting video series that I have for you today. It is going to be about Power Platform Application Lifecycle Management. That's the ALM piece that you're seeing here on the screen. And my goal is to make this about as easy and as painless as possible for you. And I'm going to try to do this for you quickly inside of 4 videos. And I said operative word try, but there is a lot of information to cover here. But hopefully this will demystify a lot of this. I got to be honest with you, when I first tried doing this, I don't know, back in the day here, there were a lot of videos, and there still are a lot of videos online, but nobody kind of connects all of the dots and shows you the process from end to end. They show you like pieces in the middle, pieces in the front, to the middle, pieces in the middle, maybe to the back. And you got to watch like, I don't know how many different videos just to kind of get this thing figured out. But I want to try to do all of this for you in one series of 4 videos. Probably will be a total of maybe 40 minutes to an hour in length. So let's just try to go through this as quick as we can, okay? So the first thing that I want to talk to you about is the overview of this 4 series videos. This video, which is the one in pink-ish, I guess, I don't know what color that is to be honest with you. But in any event, what we want to talk about is creating a service principal, and this is going to be an account that we're going to use throughout the entire process of the application lifecycle management. In the second video, we're going to take this service principal and we're going to give it the role of system administrator for the environments in the Power Platform. I'll show you what that looks like in the second video. And then what we want to do in the last 2 videos in this series, whoops, I got a little ahead of myself. In the last 2 video series, what we want to do is show you some DevOps stuff. Some DevOps stuff using a PowerShell script that I created that calls and uses and leverages the command line interface for Power Platform. And it's called the Power Platform CLI. It used to be called the Power Application CLI. In any event, we're going to show you some DevOps with that. It's 100% free. It's a great tool, free utility, supported by Microsoft, really great stuff. And then, of course, the king of DevOps is going to be Azure DevOps. Now, there can be, depending on how you implement this, if you're a one-man band, it'll be free. There's a little bit of a pain in the neck now getting it set up because you got to send an email. It takes maybe 2, maybe 3 days for you to get some stuff turned on. But nonetheless, it is doable, it is free, and I have a template for you so that it'll get some quick, get you accelerated and started quickly. And it also uses the Power Platform build tools, which is an extension. So we'll get into all of this in that video as well. All right, so that's kind of the overview of what's going on. But this one is about how to create a service principal. So to begin with this video, you're going to need to go to this Git repo, and I'll put this link in the description below so you'll have a nice, easy, quick access to it. And once you download it, we'll show you, I need to show you a trick about, unfortunately, if you're using Windows 10, kind of a real pain in the neck thing that'll get you hung up if I don't show it to you. So I will digress in a little bit to show you that. So what I want to talk to you is about Azure Active Directory, and let's talk about Service Principal and where it fits into the very big picture of security. And there's even another item on here that I'll reference verbally. I don't have it in writing, but in any event, Azure Active Directory is the Azure's version of what used to be Active Directory on-prem, and it has a bunch of additional services and stuff that you can do, mainly Service Principal. Now, Service Principal also goes by another name, so you may be confused by the term Service Principal, or maybe not, but application registration is something else that goes synonymously hand in hand with the term service principal. And so this kind of fits in the 3 items that you see on screen: a user account, a service account, and a service principal. Let's talk about this for a minute. So in Azure Active Directory, everybody knows what a user account is because if you log in to anything in Azure or Microsoft Office 365, you're using a user account, okay? So the service principal is just like a user account. As a matter of fact, it is a it is a user account. There's nothing that you're going to find by the terminology that says a service account versus user account. It's all a user account, okay? The difference is, how do you intend to use this user account? See, user accounts are tied to people, and when people come and people go out of your organization, you activate, or, well, first you create, and then when they leave, chances are you deactivate the account, right? And so the same thing with a service account. You can create it and you can deactivate it, but it's not tied to a human being. The whole premise of this is that you want something to persist. So the use case is you've got an application or you've got some services. It needs to run uninterrupted, and it can't be tied to a human being and your employee turnover. Because if that person leaves, and I'm sure you may have experienced this before, and if you have, then this is usually the fix that happens. You create what's called a service account. And so as people come and go, you don't get stuck in that pickle. And whatever this account is connected to, it doesn't run the risk of going down or having an outage, because that employee now is no longer with the company. And unfortunately, that technician or the person who set it up used their account, and now they're gone. And now, for whatever reason, that service is gone. The problem with service account is if you've ever gone to any enterprise level security training, or even just followed or read some articles on best practices, one of the things they teach you, ironically, is to never, ever, ever share your password with others. Well, the problem with a service account is it breaks this golden rule, right? You go ahead and you share it amongst, I don't know, a handful of technicians in your workplace, and everybody shares the password. And typically when you do have employee turnover, based on anybody that had access to the service account and its password, you would simply just recycle or cycle the password through to some other new password, and then reshare and redistribute that password amongst those trusted users. Well, the problem with that is it kind of, again, it breaks that methodology. So service principal is kind of a whole nother animal, and that's what we're going to be using here. It's more secure than a user account and a service account. And I kind of say this in a way that is kind of tongue-in-cheek, because the principle is the same, or the idea is. Unfortunately, the passwords are very long. They're actually GUIDs, and they're hard to remember. I mean, yes, you can copy them down, which makes it potentially insecure, especially if you don't change the secret or whatever, or rotate out the secrets. But there are ways of using Azure Key Vault services to mitigate this, to make this more secure. So the service principal, just like a user account, just like a service account, it has an ID. It's called an application ID. It's also a GUID, so it's not like some human readable name thing, although it does have a name property to it. And the password to it's not called password. It's called a secret. And that's only one of two ways that you can have an authentication mechanism with this. Another way of using an authentication mechanism for service principal is to use what's called a certificate. Very similar to like an SSL certificate. Not exactly, but just to use the term certificate so you could try to wrap your head around it a little bit better. So you have two authentication mechanisms on the service principal, that being the secret as well as the certificate. In this video, we're going to show you the secret. So the same principle is going to apply about protecting your password, protecting the secret. If people get a hold of it, it's going to be a problem. If people come and go, you want to make sure you change out the secret. And then anything that's connected to it that uses it, you want to make sure you change out the passwords as well. So again, just a quick blurb, I don't want to read to you, but Azure's service principal, it's an identity created with application, hosted services, automated tools, blah, 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 right? That's the intended use for it. And we're going to use it here in this video series on the Power Platform, because that is our target use case for this. All right, so that's it for this video. In video number 2, up and coming, again, we're going to get and show you how to assign the service principal into the environments. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's go ahead and jump over into the desktop. And I want to take you over. I told you I wanted to digress very quickly. So here we are in GitHub. I told you I'll leave a link in the description below. Just come over here to this code area and choose to download the zip. Now, do not open the zip. Do not unpack the zip. You've got to do something to it first if you're on Windows 10. So let me go over to Downloads, and here's my zip file. Here's what you need to do. Right-click on it and choose Properties with a left click. The reason I had you go here is because I want you to take notice at the very bottom. You see the security read thing that's down here? Because I downloaded it from the internet, it's blocking it. And you want to choose this Unblock. And then click Apply. And now everything's good to go, and you can proceed as you normally would. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to unpack this zip file here. I'll come over here to Extract All. We'll just go ahead and put it out in the Downloads folder. And we'll come, I don't know what, Why my windows are jumping around here. Let me just go back into downloads. Get rid of this zip file. We'll delete that. Okay, so here is our main file now, and inside of here we have a folder structure. What we want to do is we want to go into the Create Service Principal folder, and here's the thing. If I right-click in Properties again, you notice that that security thing isn't there. The reason I had you do it to the zip file and not wait till later, till after you've unpacked it, and so this is what you're going to run into if you go do this in haste and don't do what I showed you here. If you unpack it, now you're going to have to go to every single file and unblock every single shell script in this video series that I'm going to show you, because every time you want to run it, it's going to be blocked. So just make sure to unblock the zip first, then unpack it, and then you won't run into any problems, okay? Now, my scripts, I also have them signed. So the script signatures are there. I want to show you this script a little bit. I know if you don't read code, that's fine. I don't want to spend a lot of time, but I just do want you to go into the script file and know that it's there. So this stuff that's in green, this is part of the help file. If you know how to use PowerShell and the help file system, just let you know I've baked into the help into the script. What I do want you to take note of is that I do have a dry run switch parameter that you can use. If you specify dry run, it'll go through a dry run. It'll emulate what it would actually do in the real world without actually creating anything. There's some information here for some different parameters and switches, and I just wanted to bring to your attention that one of the parameters that I have in here, which I'm actually having a hard time locking my eyes on a hold of. Here it is right here. The expiration date. Right now I have this thing dying in 365 days. So this service principal will remain valid for a period of 1 year. You can change it by making it longer, or you can change it by making it shorter. It's up to you. Okay, so that's a parameter that you can go ahead and run. So just wanted to show you that stuff that's there and in the file. I also digitally signed this signature, my signature. So I'm using a certificate signing. I'll show you this one more time towards the bottom of the script. That way you know it's there. So towards the very bottom, I tell you that the script is digitally signed below by me, blah, 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 blah. Long story short is you're more than welcome to change this file all you want. But if you change the file, you're going to render the certificate because there's a file hash at the current. When I signed it, it took a snapshot of the file. And as a result of that, there's like a hash that has to do with what's in the file. And so the hash will no longer match as soon as you make the slightest change to this file. So don't change it and save it, because if you do, you're going to break the signature file. And this is tied to, in PowerShell, what's called the execution policy. So I'll just launch up PowerShell, and I'll do get execution policy. And so mine is set to remote signed. I think most of yours are set to that way. If you have it to all signed and the rest of them, my scripts should still work because it is signed. Again, unless you've altered it. One of the things that you can do visually to make sure that the file is good, if you right click on the file, again, go back to properties, under this digital signature tab, you can see that it's signed. So first, the fact that the digital signature tab is here, you know that it is signed. But if you have to click onto this and then click in details, you always want to make sure that the digital signature is okay. And right now it is okay. And the reason it's okay is because I haven't changed the file. So if you change the file and save it and come back here and do this, it'll probably tell you that the signature is no longer valid. And unfortunately, at that point, you have nothing else left to do except for to remove my signature block, which will then remove the digital signature, and you won't see this tab anymore. And then your remote execution policy, you may have to change it depending on, I don't know, whatever, not remote execution policy, but your execution policy, you may have to change it to accommodate for the script to be run. All right, so enough said. Let's go ahead and launch up the SE. At this point, I'm going to switch over to CD. I think I can do profile. Actually, it's an environment variable. What is it? env colon pro. Probably been easier just to type this in here. Profile course, I don't type that quick. Is it user profile? I never remember. Yeah, user profile. There we go. All right. CD downloads. No. All right, finally navigated my way through all of this mess just to be able to get to the file, okay? So here's the file. Again, new Power Platform Service Principal. I'm going to show you what it does and how it works with the dry run. So I'm just going to go ahead and log this in. Now, this will normally, if you run this for real in the real world, it will go ahead and create all this accounts at 2 different levels. And in order to do that, it needs to sign you in twice. So this is the first prompt. All right, so there's the first time. In the dry run, it doesn't do it, but you can see that the script's done. And so at the end of the day, what we want to grab out is this tenant ID, the application ID, and then this client secret, okay? And you can see the application ID says it's dry run, no application was created. So if I go ahead and come down and we clear out the screen again, and we go ahead and run the script and do a switch, you see all of these different parameters. Again, run the help file. You're going to want to read all of that. But to run it, if you're here in the United States and your tenant is here locally in the United States using regular Azure Cloud, you can run it just like this. If you're not in the United States and or your tenancy is not here in the United States, or you're using a different Azure Cloud besides Azure Cloud, like maybe China Cloud or what are the U.S. government or U.S. Cloud. I think there's actually, let's just go ahead and look at it because I don't remember. Let's see here. I think it's Azure Environment, and we have China Cloud, Azure Cloud, Germany Cloud, and U.S. Government Cloud. So those are the clouds that you get to choose from, and the Azure Cloud is the default one if you don't make a choice. But again, if you're here domestically, just run it head on and you'll be good to go. So I'm running this again. I've already got the prompt the first time, so I'm not going to get it. I will get it the second time, and as soon as I go ahead and authenticate that in, then what will happen is it'll go ahead and create that service principal for me. Okay? So that being said, there's a bunch of good and useful information on this screen, but what I want to do is just copy out these 3 lines. I'm going to grab Notepad++ because I want to paste it in here, because if you don't copy this out right now and you close this window, you're never going to get access to this client secret. And then you're kind of going to be up the creek without a paddle. You'll have to delete the secret, you'll have to recreate the secret, and then copy out the secret because you didn't copy it out the first time. All right, so the name of the application is up here. You'll see this right here, created an 8AD application. The name is called PowerPlat SPN, and then it's got the year and the time that it was created, okay? So if we pop over into the Azure portal, and I go ahead and I refresh this. And by the way, let's go from the home so you know how I got here. Click on Azure Active Directory or find Azure Active Directory, click into it, then come down here to App Registrations on the left sidebar, and now click over either into Owned Applications, you'll see it show up, or you'll see it over here in the All Applications. And here it is, my PowerPlat SPN, and then the date, which is today, and then the timestamp, which was at about 8:57 a.m. in the morning is when I created this. And here you'll see all of the different configuration stuff that was done. So here are the API permissions that this script went ahead and set up for you, right? So there's nothing else left for you to do here. Everything is already configured with all the access that is needed to the APIs. You've got the Graph API, the Power Apps Runtime Service, which essentially is access to the common data service. So all of this information has been pre-programmed into this script for you. You don't have to run any of that. All right, so now with this script been, already run, and we've copied out the tenant ID, application ID, and client secret ID, we are now ready to begin our second video. So go ahead and catch us in the next video. Thanks. Okay, guys, we're back again. This is the second video in the series. If you didn't watch Creating a Service Principal and you don't have a script to go ahead and do that to make sure everything's set up properly, then go ahead and watch the previous video where I kind of go through this long preamble about how to set up the script, run the script. It's really easy to run. You just essentially run it if you're here in the United States, and off to the races you go. However, I did try to provide a little bit of use case information, specific issues that you might run into with downloading the file from GitHub. So unfortunately, it wound up being a 20-minute video trying to give you a real good, thorough explanation. But it's as simple as just running a script, long, short. Okay. So in this video, what I want to do is I want to show you this, service principal system roles as it relates to the Power Platform. So let's go ahead and jump in a browser, and I'm going to start from the make.powerapps.com experience, and from here I want to show you how to navigate into the administrative area that you need to. So now that you're in make.powerapps.com, you should land, I guess, in your default environment for wherever it is, and you may need to authenticate and sign in. I didn't have to because I've got it cached. But in any event, what you do is click up here on this cog, and you want to go to the Admin Center. And then from there, on the left sidebar, when it loads, you need to click on the link that says Environments. Okay, so over here we see Environments. So let's go ahead and click here. So what I'm going to show you in this video series is the concept of application lifecycle management in a very, very simple way. We're only going to use two environments. That's going to be a development environment and a production environment. And this is the minimum, bare bones minimum configuration that you're going to have. In the real world, you're probably going to have at least maybe 3 or 4, because you may have dev, then QA, and then prod. Or you'll have dev and QA and user acceptance testing, where essentially what you'll let the customer do, or the people within the business of your organization, let them kick the tires in kind of a free-for-all, carefree way, not knowing, or with knowing that they're not going to break anything, and they have full reign to just completely try to trash the product, learn from the product. In other words, take risks, understand how it works, not be afraid to click on something to see what might happen in the real world. And so the user acceptance testing zone is very critical, I've found, in releasing software to enterprise environments. So in this video, again, we're only going to focus on 2. So let me kind of explain, because they're not clearly labeled as to the intention. The default environment, I'm using this as kind of my development environment. This David Soden's environment, I'm going to use this for the illustration purposes, at least of these videos. We're going to go ahead and we're going to use this as the production environment. So again, default is development. David Soden's environment is production. Okay, so let's now take our service principal and give him system administrative roles. Again, we're back here in the admin area. So I'm going to click into the default area, or click again. I guess maybe I didn't click the first time. And what I want you to focus on is this access block over here. Now, because we're using a service principal, we need to focus on this S2S apps, okay? This is essentially where service principals, application registrations, and other things are added, okay? So it's going to be helpful to understand the name of my service principal. And so if I don't know the name, I'm not going to be able to go much further. Now, if you weren't using a service principal and you wanted to use a service account or a user account, then what you would need to do is to do what I'm about to show you down here in the S2S apps, but just do it up here, guys. Do it in the users area. The steps are literally 99.9% identical, okay? So in the S2S apps, what we're going to do is we're going to choose a new application user. And from here, I'm going to choose add an app. Again, application registrations and service principals, I went through this in video number 1. They are pretty much synonymous. They're one, I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'm getting tongue-tied. All the same, okay? So Here is our new service principal account that I've created called PowerPlat SPN, and then the date timestamp. And so all I need to do is highlight this and add it. And at that point, assign it to the only business role that I have. If you had more than one business role, then I would suggest putting it at the organizational level, or at the highest level that you can possibly do it. And now remember, we're adding the system administrator role, which is all the way down here at the bottom of the list. So scroll, scroll, scroll. All right, here we are, system administrator. That's it, easy peasy. That's all you have to do is press the select and create, and it will add this service principal now as a system administrator, but just for this one environment. So you have to think of environments almost like their network or like a domain. It's its own little area, right? And so this user now can control and do everything that you need it to do. And because what we're doing here, when we're working in this environment, we're working with solutions, and we need to import, export, these solutions around. In order to do that, you need to make sure that you have those system administrator permissions. Now, you can create custom roles. That's out of the scope of this video. So if you wanted to not use the system administrator role, but just give the granular roles that's needed, know that you could create a new role as long as you have the appropriate permissions, and you can avoid using the system administrator role for whatever reason if you so chose to do that. If you want to see that in another video, let me know in the comments below, and maybe I'll consider doing a video on that if there's enough requests. But in any event, we just need to follow through, do the same steps to the other environment, okay? So this time I'm going to go over to David Soden's environment, again down to the S2S apps under the access block, if and or when it ever loads. Okay, here we are again in the access area. We got to click on the S2S apps. I'm clicking here. I'm going to click new app user, add an app, which is really the service principal. I'm selecting the service principal account we created in video 1. I'm going to choose the only organizational unit I have. This is the default way it looks out of the box if you don't change it. Go ahead and choose the system administrator role all the way at the bottom and hit save and create. And now that information is done. Okay guys, that is it for this very short video. Much better than the first one because all we had to do is just add system admin to both of these. So now with the account being set up, we're ready to move on to the third video where we can actually start using and doing and get into the exciting stuff of actually doing the ALM stuff. All right, we'll see you in the next video. Okay, welcome back, and now it's time to begin the actual ALM DevOps process. In this particular video, video number 3, we're going to use not Azure DevOps, but just the generic term DevOps. And so to pull this off, we're going to use a tool called Power Platform Command Line Interface. And if you would like to download this, I will, well, actually, you're going to need to have to download this, so make sure you do that. The description for the video, there will be a link in that box below, and so go ahead and go there to get to the link. If you want to just go straight up into Google and find it, I don't have a Google browser open. Let's do this. We'll go ahead and search for Power Platform CLI. Should pull it up. Yep, this is the first one. So here's the actual documentation. You just download it and install it, and lo and behold, you'll have it. Now, that being said, let's get out of this PowerPoint presentation and go over to PowerShell. And so here I am in the very particular directory where these scripts are located. So if we look at this graphically from the downloads folder, again, with it unblocked. So I dig into the first layer, and for the purposes of this video, we're dealing with the Power Platform Command Line Interface. So in here I have 2 scripts for you. I'm only highlighting one of them. That's the service principal script today. And the actual directory account, this is a little bit easier from the standpoint of running because you really don't have to pass in as many parameters. It will be interactive. It'll ask you to log into the account. Now just make sure that account that you're logging into, based on the previous video, We showed you how to add the administrator role to the environments for a service principal. Again, make sure one click up from there was the area where you will add user accounts. Same thing there. Add your user account, make sure they're system administrator before running this directory account version of this script. Okay, so with that being said, what I want to show you now is how to build out this script. So I'm going to pick the service principal script, and then we'll go ahead, and I'm using the ISE PowerShell version. The reason for that is it presents much easier. I can show you all of the variables visually, whereas regular PowerShell, I'm not going to get that. I'll just have to simply tab through to cycle. So what you want to do is you want to build everything from this tenant parameter all the way down to online version. So you need to build all of these items out. So what I do is I go to tenant space application ID space client secret source environment destination environment solution and then online version, and then do shift home to get the whole entire line, and then I just copy or cut that out. And then what I do is I go back to the notepad. Now I've already got this built right here, but I want to show you what this would look like here. So this is basically the beginnings of it. So here's the tenant ID. From here, I can simply just copy and paste to build this out, right? Making sure you don't miss anything or screw anything up like I just did because I had my cursor in the wrong space. So I have tenant ID, and then I got it jammed up against this minus. So you got to make sure that you've got enough spaces in here. So make sure maybe put a space there, put a space there. Anyway, just go down the line and make sure you got enough spaces. Anyway, when you have meticulously made absolute perfectly, clear to yourself that you've done it correctly, then go ahead and you'll just simply copy this back out of here with it fleshed out. And I'm going to copy it out, okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste it in and we're going to run it. But one of the things I wanted to show you, there's some extra information in here that wasn't in here previously. So you saw me copy out when I created from video number 1, the tenant ID, the application ID, and the client secret. So you may be asking, okay, what is the rest of this information? Okay, so pretty straightforward. Remember we told you we're going to use the dev environment, the production environment. Okay, so one of the things that we need to do, and I don't have a browser open, let's do that. So we need to determine our source and destination environments. And for the purposes of this video, I told you I was going to call it prod and dev, right? And so if we jump back over into the environments area. So again, this is the admin center. And as soon as it loads, I can show you what I wanted to show you. Click over into environments. And so again, the default environment is my development environment. So I'm going to go over here. And so again, remember earlier, this is where we added all the stuff for the access. Well, the environment URL is over here under details. And if you just simply hover over this and then right click, you can choose copy link address. And so what I've done is I've made notes to myself, okay, here's my dev environment, and I pasted that here, right? So if you, whoops. So if you see right here, this is where I pasted it, and this is the environment URL that I copied out, and you can see that here, right? Dev, or what's dfadmin.crm, and then over here, same thing, dfadmin.crm, that kind of stuff, right? So now all I need to do is go and change over, go back to environments. I go to David Soden's environment. This is my production environment. And then I got this org 6 whatever blah blah blah. And so that's the URL that's over here. So now the only other thing to decide is, okay, what is it that I want to move from the source environment to the destination environment, and what version do I want to set? So let's go look at this. So the source is going to be the default environment for me because that's my development environment. So I'm going to get out of the admin area and I'm going to shift back over to make.powerapps.com. So you can see that right here in the URL. If I come over to solutions, what I want to do is I want to move this HRPTO solution. Now there is a very specific thing you need to pay attention here. Never, never, never copy out the display name. Don't use the display name, okay? What you want to use, and I really screwed this up. What you want to use is this name column. You want to copy this out. So this HRPTO. Do not copy the HR-PTO. Well, you won't copy it because it's not your name of your solution, but for your solution, just copy it out of the name column. If you copy it out of the name column, you'll be fine. See, demo space solution versus this is all one word. Can't have any spaces in it, and it's really finicky about some kind of characters. It'll name it what it needs to name to make it appropriate or make it legal. So for me, that's what I want to move. So that's why mine says HRPTO. So again, copy it out of the name column. All right, so now if we are hovered over and selected just like we are, we can either click these ellipses and then click settings, or we can come up here and click these ellipses and then choose settings. Either way gets us to the same place, but the key is I have to have it selected, okay? So I'll just choose this and then settings. If you're going to do this manually, this is where you'd set it out. So I'm going to change mine to 1.0.0.0, right? And I'm going to update it. So now you see that the version in my development environment is version 1. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change it to version 50.0.1.25. And so if we look all the way here at the very end of my information, this is the online version parameter that's all the way at the end. And of course, that didn't work out well. So the online, oh, dear Lord, I don't know what I'm doing. I have a trackpad. I'm on a laptop. So the mouse is acting really stupid and finicky. Anyway, I'm done. So that's exactly how you build all of this out. Okay, so you need all of these parameters, and I showed you how to build it and copy and paste it into here. And this is what you need to provide, this information here. Okay, so the parameter switch name is called source environment, and then we have the destination environment that's over here. That's the name of the parameter. Now, in my illustration of showing you this, I just gave it a label of dev and prod. And I did it just so that you could see that which environment is which. Okay, but anyway, just provide the value to the appropriate switch. And again, over here in PowerShell, when you're using this and building out, all of the different, dagnabbit. So when you're building out all your different parameters, just know how to map them when you get into the text file. So you've seen me do this before. Anyway, so just copy this all over with what it needs to be and put it into this file, and then get your values and your ducks in a row so that you have everything. So now with this being said, you have a single command that you can run and you don't have to get prompted. Now let me show you something. I'll break out of this. So let's go ahead and run the service principal. You don't have to provide any parameters. I've set this up for you in such a way to where if you forget, you can simply just run it straight out. And now it's asking you for the tenant ID. And you can painstakingly switch back and forth. Let me get all the way over here. You can, copy this out. If I can find my cursor, where is it? You can copy this out and paste it in here. And then it'll ask you for the next piece of information. And you can copy it out and paste it here. Okay, so copy and paste, and you'll go through the entire script. Or, let me do Control-C to cancel, then CLS to clear the screen. Okay, so now, like I said, you could run it that way. I prefer to run it in this one fell swoop way, because I like to be able to copy and paste where I can visually see everything. So I am going to set my cursor here at the very beginning. Do Shift End and Control-C to copy. Now I'm going to come over here and hit Control-V to paste that all in. So now you can see all of those parameters are fed into here. Okay. So what the script is going to do, it's going to create us 2 new accounts for the Power Platform CLI. It's going to extract, first it's going to update the version number. Then it's going to extract the solution. And you might be asking, okay, so when it extracts the solution, where's it going to go? Well, because my cursor is here at C, users, David Soden downloads Power Platform, blah, 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 blah. I'm running it in the context of here. So when it downloads the file, it's actually going to download my solution file into this folder here. So just to let you know that that's there, you can then take a copy of it. You can put it in source control. You can modify my script if you want to, and even add a source control step and add the commands such as git, commit, git, add, all those stuff that you need, and then git pushed if you have a repo out on the server, and add those steps in so that you can actually do a commit to the source repo if you wanted to repo anything that you're pulling out. All right, so with this being said, let's just go ahead and run this flat out now. We can see that it's clearing up any cached authentication mechanisms. It's now recreating those authentication mechanisms for both prod and dev. That's done, and now we're getting ready to update the version, and we are connecting to the default environment to do that, and we're also now going to export out our solution. So this is going to take a little bit of time and process. I'll pause the video and come back as we go and move through these steps. Okay, we can see that it's succeeded. It's now connecting to the destination environment, and it's now importing. So a couple of things while it's running through there that I can give you the visual. The HRPTO solution, you can see now that the version has been updated by the script, and we've got it exported out. Let me come over here. See, now we have the HRPTO solution zip file. And if we switch over to the destination environment, which is davidsoden.com, come over here into solutions, when the script is done running, we will go ahead and we will see the, again, I lost my cursor. Oh, actually it's done. Wow. Okay, so cool. Let's go ahead and switch back into the environment, and we don't see it yet, so we can manually refresh. And the same version, instead of 1.0.0.1, it should be, and it is, 50.0.1.25. Now, something I want to show you. If we click into the solution, first of all, I'm going to get a banner up here. And it says you cannot directly edit objects that are managed. This is a managed solution in this environment. It's production, so I don't want anybody monkeying with this solution. So the script is set to export it managed. You want to do your development in the development environment. This is a best practice. So if I switch back over into my development environment and go into the solution, you notice I don't get that, that bar. It's a unmanaged solution in an unmanaged state, so I can edit and alter this solution as much as I want to. So it is taking a little bit of time. So another thing to show you too is the owner. The owner is David Soden all the way down, right? And you can see that. Now, just real quick, these two are missing, and the reason is it's a model-driven app, and the model-driven app on the backside in the solution is actually part one of two. The model-driven app consists of two pieces, the sitemap, which is this guy, and then the actual app or model-driven app itself. They collapse down together when we come out of the solution and we go into the applications area. So if we look at the what is it called? Here it is. My modal app or model app. The owner you can see here is David Soden. And so you can't see the owner, unfortunately, in solutions because it breaks it apart. Now, I am the owner in the default environment, but notice we used the service principal to move and authenticate into both the default environment and authenticate into the destination environment. And that was also the account that I used when I ran the import for the script. So the owner in the destination solution under this production environment is no longer going to be me. It's going to be the service account. So the service account that we created and assigned is now the new owner. So just be aware of that. This is a good thing because this is now not going to break your app in the event that people leave the organization. If you need to go ahead and share it out, as long as you're a system administrator yourself, you can go ahead and share these apps out itself. Now, I haven't shared the app as you saw. I haven't done anything with it. So if I go out now to the application area, I will have access or should have access to the model-driven app. Now, there is one exception to the rule. The Canvas app I will have to share with myself. So I'm going to go into the solution. I'm going to go find the Canvas app. We'll click over here on applications to weed this down. And here is my Canvas app. So with this being selected, I'm going to go up here to share, and I'm going to share it with myself. So I'm going to add me. Okay, and I can set myself as a co-owner, or I don't have to set myself as a co-owner. It doesn't really matter. In any event, I'm going to go ahead and share that. And so this will share the rest of the information out. And as soon as this is done, which it is, I'll go ahead and hit cancel. I'll come out of this, and with any luck, if things don't blow up on me, I should have access to that Canvas app, and here it is, HRPTO. So as you can see, as a system administrator, you can go ahead and share that information out. Now, if you want to delete it, the best way to delete it is, at least for a Canvas app, is you're going to go you're going to go in with the PowerShell, and if we go ahead and we look at the script that I've created for you, down at the very bottom, I've commented some stuff out of this script. And at the bottom of this script, I have this little area that should be of interest to you. It says take control over a Canvas app, and it does not work with model-driven apps, so note that. So the first thing you're going to need to run is this add Power Apps account. The next thing you're going to need is you're going to need to set the application owner. And so you're going to need the user GUID. Okay, and so I can do that. So this is the app owner, but the app name is also a GUID, and it's not really user GUID, it's application GUID. So let me show you where to get that. And to get that, here is my Canvas app. I can come up under here and then click the ellipsis and go to details. And here is the application ID. So I simply just need to pass this parameter in to that command. And here it is again. And then I can take ownership of it, and then I can delete it. Now, the other thing to note is because this is a managed solution, right? I can go ahead and click the solution name itself, even though I don't own it, but I'm a system administrator myself. I can delete the entire solution. And the nice thing about this is that it will not leave fragments in the default solution. Now, I have another video up here on YouTube, and you can check that out about solutions, where I go into great detail about what the default solution is, what it means, how it's used. But just know this, if you're not deleting stuff out of a managed solution, you're going to leave fragments of that application behind in the default solution. But because this is managed, and you can tell because it's locked, it says managed externally, and it is. If it was unmanaged, it would be in an unlocked state, like this is down here. But because it's managed, if I delete that, I will delete every single application, every single object. Everything is going to cleanly come out of the environment. So it's really a great thing to use solution. So that is it for this video. I showed you everything that I've got baked into the script. You don't have to learn the Power Platform command line interface. You just simply have to understand my script and the parameters in order to simply use a source and a destination environment. And if you follow the directions in step 2, which seems to be the missing part here, you're going to see this same thing go through and through and through again when we get to Azure DevOps. So that's kind of the missing piece. Video number 2 is very, very important. So we'll see you in the next and final video, video number 4, where we're going to show you Azure DevOps. Thanks a lot. Hey everybody, welcome back to the final video, video number 4. Here we're going to focus on the king of DevOps, Azure DevOps, and king in the Microsoft world, that is. So I know there's other tools out there as well. But in any event, so Azure DevOps is here for the Power Platform in the Microsoft land, and this is a really great tool. Now, this comes with a caveat that you can't just use Azure DevOps in and of itself. I guess you really could if you did a couple of, well, anyway. There's always like 10 ways to do things in Microsoft land, but nonetheless, this is by far the simplest and the easiest to do. All right, so video number 2 is the prerequisite for this video, okay? And video number 1, if you're going to use a service principal, is a really quick way of creating a service principal account with my script here. That I have a link still in the description of the video with all of the links everywhere that I've gone through the series. So these will be consistent across the video, and I'll probably create one huge master class video so that you don't have to go into the 4 different videos. You can just watch the big, huge, gargantuan, very long video. All right, so in any event, here is the final video for you guys. So here we are to recap or to set this video up. I've back into the development environment. So if you've been watching this series up till now, this will all make sense. My development environment is the default environment, and my production environment is this David Soden's environment. And so you can see here's the solution that we've been using in this video series is the HRPTO. And you've seen inside of it with the other videos, so I'm not going to go back into them. But you can also see that I've reset the version back to 1.0.0. And down here in the files that I have downloaded, actually, let me get rid of this guy because that was the file that downloaded from the previous video in number 3. And we want to come up a layer. And what we're going to focus on today is Azure DevOps. And so I have a template file for you, which is a pipeline template. And this will go into Azure DevOps. And so here we are over in the Azure DevOps land. I don't have anything configured, okay? So we're going to set this up 100% from scratch so you don't miss a beat. Okay, I'm no longer going to need this very long command because I'm not using PowerShell anymore. So let me just get rid of this and delete it. But I still am going to want to use and need to use all of this information here. And I'm going to show you how to set all this up. Okay, so with this, hopefully you have something similar. One of the things I showed you in video number 3, so I'm not going to go through it again. If you haven't seen video number 3, go ahead and go through it. I show you where to get the URLs. Without going into too much detail, essentially you come over here into this environment area, and then from inside of here, you click into the environment name, and in the details screen for the environment, I'll do this one real quick. Up under this details, here is the environment URL. So this is where I grabbed it to plug it into here. Again, I went into great detail in the other video, not going to go into much more than what I just did. All right, so that being said, let's switch back over to Azure DevOps. First thing we need to do is create a project. Now, a project is really neat because it allows you to create everything that you're going to do on a project, including pipelines. So we'll just call this ALM ALM Power Platform Azure DevOps. Seems good enough, right? Okay, create project. That's all you have to do. You don't have to worry about setting anything else because you're going to want it private. Obviously, you're not going to want to have everybody in. Well, maybe you do. If you want a public one, then go ahead and set it up. All right, so with it being set up, this is what you get out of the box, guys. You get the general information. You get the boards. You get the repo, which is a Git repository by default. And then here's the pipelines, okay? So I'm going to assume that you don't know anything or you don't know much about Azure DevOps, but you want to use or get to know Azure DevOps. Now, maybe your team is already using the boards, and you're using this much like you would use Jira, and you have your sprints, your backlogs, and all your work boards and all that stuff already set up. So maybe this is the only thing you're using. And maybe you have other projects where you are using the repo, but you're doing traditional dev. But now you're not really quite sure how to use this with Power Platform. A couple things that you need to do. So I'm going to go, see this breadcrumb thing up here? This shows you kind of how many layers deep in the onion you are. I'm going to go all the way back out to the organization, which is what I'm calling DSoden Lab. Now you can have multiple organizations out under your login ID if you so choose, but most people just have one. So with that being said, in the organization or at the organizational level, I want you to take notice at the bottom left corner. See, this says organizational settings. This changes contextually as I go into a project, right? So now it says project settings. If I go back out to DSoden Lab, which is the organization layer, I have organization settings. So this is where you set up everything for Azure DevOps as a whole, including settings for your pipelines and securities and all this other stuff. So this stuff can be set out here. So if you want to apply security to pipelines and different things, here's some global settings essentially for pipelines and all this other stuff. But if you want to go into granular as it relates to what you're setting up in the project, then that information is contextually at that next layer of the onion down in. So then you want to do is you want to dig into project settings. And so this is one of the first things we're going to want to hang out and do because we have two things we have to set up. The first thing that we need to set up is down here into pipelines. We need to set up service connections. Now the service connections is this. This is what we're going to set up. We got to set up two connections. One connection for dev, one connection for prod using this service principal account, okay? So that's straightforward and pretty easy. The one other problem that we have is we need to get the build tools. Remember I told you Power Platform build tools? We need to install those. Well, those are called extensions, and those extensions are installed at the organizational level. So just like I showed you before, click back out to the organizational level, come down here to organizational settings, and if you come down here, now you see extensions under general. Right now, I have this installed in my area, okay? So you can see that it's there. I'm going to uninstall it just so that we can actually show you what to do, because yours is going to be completely blank, all right? So one of the things you want to do is browse the marketplace. So we'll go ahead and click Browse Marketplace, and you want to type in Power Platform Build Tool. And I think it's plural, tools. And here it is. You want to look for this purple logo, at least as of the date of this recording, 5/19/2022. Okay, so if you click on it, you can choose Get for Free, and you click it, and I'm clicking Get for Free, and now it's saying, hey, I'm going to connect you to Azure DevOps. I only have the one organization, as you saw earlier. I'm going to choose Install. Now, as soon as I do that, it's all good. I can proceed to my organization. It's going to kick me back into Azure DevOps to the very front. And if I go to organizational settings again, and I come down here to extensions, once again, I have the Power Platform build tools installed. So that takes care of prerequisite number 1. Prerequisite number 2 is what I told you earlier, where we need to set up connections to the dev and the production environment. And so that's done under the project settings. We have to scroll down under pipelines, and down here under service connections, we need to set up 2 connections. So let's click Create Service Connection. Now, with the Power Platform build tools, they give you this Power Platform connector, service connector. So go ahead and scroll down and choose it. If you didn't want to scroll down, you could type in Power like this, and it'll come up and bubble up to the top. Either way, that's the connector that you want to use. So this is the server URL. So this is what this really is saying, and this is where most people maybe get spun around. They're like, I don't know what the server URL. What server URL? What they're talking about is the environment URL, not the server URL. I mean, technically it is a server, but I think it would be better labeled as environment URL to speak in native Power Platform languages. So in any event, I'm going to set up dev first. So I'm going to copy out my URL because this is my server URL. And now I just go back to the service principal. I copy out my tenant ID, the application ID, just a lot of copying and pasting. Make sure you get them right, guys, because if you screw this up, you'll get errors and you will be chasing your tail trying to find out what the heck happened. And those GUIDs can get pretty gnarly if you miss just one letter or one digit or character. Okay, so this is my dev environment. I'm simply just going to call this dev to keep it really, really easy. The description I don't need, and I do want to select grant permissions to all pipelines. Hit save. Okay, I now have a dev environment. And so I'll choose not now. And ideally, I wish I could just kind of clone this. I don't think I can. Is there a save as? No. Cancel. I don't have a copy. Duplicate. No. Can I select? No. Okay, so no way around it. You can't copy and paste and cheat. You got to come over here. Yep. All right, so just do this all over again. I'm going to scroll down, click Power Platform. Next, we're going to do this rigmarole all over again, but this time this is going to be the production environment. We want to grab the production URL, paste that in here. The tenant, application ID, and client secret are all identical because we're using the same account and we granted the same account access to both areas. Now, I want you to understand something. If you have a multi-environment, I'm only using 2 in my simple use case here. If you had, you can set up multiple service accounts to connect the different environments to make it even more secure. But just know that when you do that, make sure you keep track of who's on first, what's on second, and who you granted administrative or system administrative access into those service accounts, because if you lose track of things, you're going to have an issue. The main thing, though, is you just want to make sure that you set up the right account with the right environment. So to keep things simple, I have one account who's a system administrator in both my production and dev environment. In a real world scenario, honestly, I would advise against it. I would use two separate service accounts, two separate service principals, and two separate, maybe, allowing access in for users. But I would only grant that in scope to just the prod. Okay, so one account for prod, and maybe for dev and QA and UAT, that doesn't matter because you're not using production data. Maybe that's okay to use shared accounts. That would probably be a best practice strategy for you guys to follow. All right, so all of this being said, I now have my production environment set up and connection. All the information's here. I'm going to go ahead and click save. You can see now I have a dev and a prod. Now I need to just simply go back into my project. So I'll click out here to the second item, which will now take me into Azure DevOps for this particular project. I keep getting my pop-ups. So now what we need to do is come down here to pipelines, and I don't have any pipelines. So I need to import that pipeline template, and I can do that by this vertical ellipsis. I can choose import a pipeline. So now I'm going to browse, and I'm going to browse to my downloads folder because that's where I have it. And I'm going to drill all the way through until I see Azure DevOps. Click into that. And this is the template. It says template, but it's a JSON file. So go ahead and click that and choose import. That will import the pipeline with all of the steps. Now you're going to have to go in and do a little bit of configuration, but not much. Okay, so don't click anything when you get to this screen. Just like freeze and don't do anything because you've got several layers that you need to do. It's hard to see, but right now Azure DevOps has landed you on this pipeline item. And it's telling you some settings need your attention. And we've got we've got this all the way through. So let's go through this piece by piece, starting at the top where it lands you at pipeline. Coming over here to the agent pool area, it wants you to select something. So from the pull down, choose hosted Azure pipelines. Okay. Now I do need to, let's see here. Let me do this. There's a disclaimer that I need to make. Power Platform, build tools. Let's see here. I think, yeah, this is it. Okay, so somewhere down here, there is this disclaimer. Or there used to be a disclaimer. I don't know what happened to it. Let's see. Let me see if I can. All right. Anyway, I'm going to have to come back to this. What I needed to tell you, or what I was trying to show you that I can't seem to find right now, is that Azure DevOps, when you set it up as a brand new customer, like if you go up to Azure DevOps, sign up, get an account, it's not going to give you a pipeline to use. Like you won't have this free hosted Azure pipeline. It's going to tell you that you need to, do whatever. If you're an individual, you can get one, I forget what they call it. It's one pipeline or one ability to, it's a unit of one, a measurement of one. There's a specific term for it, and for the life of me, I can't remember what it is. But essentially what it is this hosted pipeline, and then they only give you one of it. And if you're an individual, you can do it for free, and they give you like so much space for free. You'll see all of that when you sign up, but make sure you send the email requesting access to get a free pipeline unit or whatever it's called. And when you do that, then you'll be able to follow along completely. So this video may take you 2 or 3 days to follow through with and actually set it up. If you don't already have an Azure DevOps subscription and you're setting that up for the first time, just know that you are going to have to send that request email. Read everything very carefully when you sign up because it will tell you about it. And even when you're doing this, at some point it will tell you click here to send an email to request access. So just make sure you read everything. Okay. So assuming you've got everything you need, you want to set Azure Pipeline hosted here. And I always use Windows latest here on that side. So that's it for pipeline. That's already configured now. Now let's click to the next layer in this onion, get sources. So all we simply have to do is just look down here. And what it's complaining about is it wants to know what my branch is. and I don't have a branch set up right now because I didn't do anything with my repository. So I'm going to have to bail out of this. I need to, let's just go ahead and leave for right now. So what I need to do is I need to come over here to Azure DevOps, and I need to essentially initialize the main branch. So it's this last option down here, okay? Essentially all it's going to do is create a README, and it's going to create a main branch. So once I do that, now I've got a main branch and I've got a README in here. I can come back over to my pipeline and I can finish configuring that. And unfortunately, that was a prerequisite step. So I do apologize. You're going to see me do this all over again, but we'll have to import the pipeline because I didn't save it. So let's browse. I've got it here already. We'll set it up. Click import. Take your hands away from the keyboard and the mouse. Don't touch anything. Just let it load. Okay. So now just immediately move over to the right sidebar. So from this pull down, you can choose Azure Pipeline, and I'm not going to go through that disclaimer I went through earlier. And now I'm going to go Windows Latest, and now I'm going to choose Get Sources. So now with the Get Sources chosen, this automatically resolves to the one and only branch, the main branch. So I have that now, so I'm good to go. So now what I need to do is come down here into the agent, and right now at this particular moment, there's nothing for you to do here because there's some stuff down here that we need to focus on. So this is the Power Platform tool installer. There's nothing to configure. Don't delete it. It needs to be there. This one, I have it here disabled, but if you right click on it, you can enable and disable these items, these tasks in the agent jobs by simply right clicking and choosing enable disable. I use this to just test connectivity. So if you want, you can go through and select all of these and disable them and then just enable this one, and you can do like a dry run just to make sure that your connections are working and you're not pulling your hair out, because if the connections fail, then you got to start there, and then that means you got to come all the way out to the service accounts or service connections and reconfigure them and copy and paste all that information in there that you need. Okay, so that being said, let's go ahead and set one of the connections. So who am I? Doesn't much matter. You can choose dev or prod. Remember, we set those up earlier. I'll just leave it as dev. Now, the Power Platform set solution version, this is going to be on the dev, okay? Because we want to start with the dev, and then we want to import it into the destination environment with that updated version. So we'll first set this first. And so we're going to set the version, and then we're going to export it. But where are we going to export it from? We're going to export it from, and we're choosing development. We're exporting from the development environment. And so this is all you have to do, guys. You just have to simply, build all of this information out down here, bit by bit, piece by piece. And so now I'm importing the solution. Where am I going to import it into? Well, I'm not going to import it into dev. This is the only item in the stack that you're going to choose the production environment, because this is where it is. Now, this publish artifact drop, this thing is set up in such a way to where that zip file that it downloads, it's going to put it in this artifact. And you'll probably need to prune this, because if you're doing the free version, it only stores, I think, 2 gigabytes of information. So over time, you're going to fill this thing up. There is a purge that you can do for artifacts. I think it's at the settings level and or at the organizational level, but just go ahead and explore that on your own. I'm not going to go into that right now for this. This is something just to be aware of, that this will work, but keep an eye on your published artifacts and the amount of space that you have available to you, and set up and look at the policies around that for retention, because you can and will run out of space eventually, and you don't want to get caught by surprise. All right, so this is now technically configured. What I'm going to do is I'm going to choose this drop down. I don't want to queue anything. I just want to save it. So I'm going to choose save, and I'm going to just leave the defaults and click save. All right, we're not done yet, but we're almost done. We're going to come over here to variables. And under variables, I have 2 custom variables. This is the build number and the solution name. Let's go back over to this file, because this is now down to the last wire, or the last pieces of information. And you can use this DevOps template very flexibly, just like you can use the PowerShell script. All you have to do is go into the variables and tell it, what do I want to move and what do I want to not move. So at this point, Azure DevOps is going to handle the revisions for me. Now, if you're not sure what a revision is, it's essentially this last number. For the DevOps, I only need to provide the first 3 and the trailing period. So I am going to wipe this out up here, or try to. And then I'm going to paste in that, and I need my trailing period. So 50.0.1. And then the first version of it, because I have never run this pipeline before, it's going to start with version 1. So it'll be 50.0.1.1 when this is all said and done. So now I've set the last piece of information, and so I am good to go. Now, before I do that, I do want to try to provide as much education on all this stuff as I can. I believe it's under options. Here's the build number and the format, and so here's my variable build number. And then I'm concatenating that technically, but there's no concatenate function, it just happens. This $rev_r comes from the Azure DevOps platform itself, and there's a bunch of variables that you can use throughout this in a very creative way. If you want to know what that is, hover over this little icon here and then click this link for more information. It'll take you to a really great page that'll have configure and run or build numbers. And down here it gives a bunch of great examples. And these tokens are really variables. And so you can see, I think down here is my revision number, and it explains about what all of that is. But know that there's all these additional tokens / variables that you can use throughout the configuration of your Azure DevOps pipeline. And so this is really great information to know that's there. And that was baked into the platform, or the Azure DevOps platform, under the options. So I've already set this up for you. You don't need to mess with it. Really, the only thing you need to be concerned with is the build number and the solution name, so that you can tell it what do you want to increment version-wise and what solution do you want to choose. All right, that being said, let's save and queue, and let's watch, hopefully, some magic happen without any whammies. But before we do that, let's go back over to the Power Platform. Let's go back into the make.powerapps.com experience. Let's notate a couple of things so that we know where we are and what's happening. So here's my HRPTO version 1.0.0.0. The solution is completely missing from my production environment, which is my David Soden environment. You can see there's no solution there. So no tricks up my sleeve, just letting you know that Azure DevOps is going to handle all of this for us. So save and queue. And I don't have to provide anything. I can do a save and commit if I want. I'll just do save and run. And this will spin up my instance. And you can see down here, note at the bottom, it's going to say queued, and it'll go from queued to running. And we can watch all of this unfold like paint dry. When this is all said and done, the zip file will be located up here in this generalized area for the run. I'm going to click into the run so that we can actually watch this thing go from queue and kick in. And if there's any issues, these check marks will be not green, they'll be red or something. But right now, see, that one went through just fine. It's green, life is good. So I expect everything to go through and be green, assuming I set everything up and didn't fat finger any of my connections. Probably should have ran through that who am I test just to show you how that worked, but it works pretty much the same. It's only one thing, and we don't have to wait as long, but I'm pretty confident that this will go through. I took my time as best as I could, but sometimes mistakes do happen. And it looks like I am connecting. Yep, so the fact that I was able to do that, it looks good. So if I'm going to have a problem, it's because I fat-fingered something in the production environment, but it looks like all of the authentication mechanisms for my development environment are all good. So we can see the export solutions happening well. Now, historically, this has taken about 5 minutes to run. So I will pause the video here just because we're about a minute and a half in. And by pausing the video, we'll come back. All right, guys, we made it through the other step of the export. We're now on to the import step. We're about 8 seconds, 9 seconds, 10 seconds into this step. So I'm going to pause again. All right, guys, we are almost done wrapping up here. It's publishing the artifact now to the drop. And it's imported successfully. And we're running towards the tail end, almost through the post check. It's taking kind of an unusually long time to post, but in any event. All right, so it looks like we are good to go, and we are done. Boom. All right, so everything is finalized. Life is good. So a couple things. To go out, we'll leave the job. We'll see all of the information is there. We see that we have a job success at the very bottom. Remember I told you up here we'd see the published item. So if we come up here to published item, we can click in. we go into the drop, and there's our zip file. So we can download the entire solution as it was taken in the snapshot. So now we can have this historically. Now, ideally, you may want to add additional steps to maybe check this into the repo. And you can do that with PowerShell, adding a PowerShell step in the pipeline. So I didn't do it in the pipeline that we have here for you, but just know that you can go in here to edit. And one of the steps that you can go ahead and add, if you were to add an item, just come over here, click plus, click PowerShell, and you simply just, go ahead and add PowerShell script to that particular one, and then you can take it and publish it into the repo from the drop or wherever it may be, and you can add it as a step towards the end and configure all of that information, okay? And then write your PowerShell script to test it. So that is it for this video, and the only thing that's really kind of left to show you is behind the scenes what happened in the environment. So if we come over here, you saw that the screen just refreshed, and I have version 50.0.1.1. If we go over to Azure DevOps, we can see the run, and we can see the revisional piece of that run. Oh, actually, I went too far out. I got to go into pipelines. Pipelines. Here's our pipeline, and we can see 50.0.1.1. Okay, if I run this again, it'll do 50.0.1.2. And it'll continue to do. That's that revisional item that I showed you about over here in the additional documentation somewhere in here. I don't know where it was, but anyway, it's somewhere down in this area. There it is. So that's where that revisional build number comes in. So inside of here, once again, because the solution is being done by the service principal, the owner will once again be the service principal. And we can see that here again. If we switch over to the development environment and look into solutions, we'll see that the solution was incremented from 1.0.0.0 to 50.0.1.1. So Azure DevOps has now done its job through the pipeline. So that, again, is it for this video. You've now seen it work. Hopefully you have the same amount of success. Just go through these videos maybe a couple of times. If anything was hard to grasp, just that's the nice thing about video. You can stop, rewind, and watch a couple of times until it kind of makes sense for you. All right, that's it. Thanks a lot, guys. We'll see you in the next series. Bye-bye. Hey guys, I just couldn't help myself. I wanted to give you a bonus video. And the reason for this is because I want to show you the hell that I'm about to go through. I need to now go ahead and clean up that service principal account, because I don't want to have stuff floating around where people have seen the service principal account and try to hack into my server and get stuff. But I want to show you the pain, the absolute pain. There's bugs in the system, and if you need to go through this, I want you to know how to handle it. So the first thing to clean up the service principal, there's a bunch of steps. So I'm going to go pretty quick. It's a video. Pause it when you need to, or watch it a couple of times, because I don't want to go really, really slow. Again, this is a bonus video, and this is just for you guys that are like going to get stuck. I know you're going to get stuck because I beat my head against the wall trying to fix this. All right, so let's go ahead and click on the Azure Active Directory. Let's come over here to the app registrations, because that's where Service Principal is. And again, yours is either going to land in this owned applications, but mine is over here, and yours may be too, in the all applications. And now here is the Power Plat Service Principal that I set up. So this is the prerequisite step. Start here. Delete your Service Principal account from Azure. So I'm going to go ahead and delete it. Yes, I know it's going to break. That's fine. I don't care. My Azure DevOps is going to break. Everything's going to break, which is great. So it's still showing that it's here, but it's not. Go up here and click refresh. So there's like nuance number one. We have Ajax. I don't know why they can't refresh the screen on coming back to it, but they don't. All right, so that's said and done. Problem one solved. Here's where the fun doesn't begin. Let's come and close all of this out, because I got too many windows open. Let's close this down. Actually, let's just start closing a lot of stuff down. Okay. The only thing I don't need this. Let's close this down. I don't need PowerPoint open. Let's get rid of this. Okay. The magic is going to begin in the back-end administrative area. And I got to do this problem for each and every environment. Luckily, I only had two. So here's the first thing. So in the default environment, I'm in the make.com. I'm going to show you the complete breadcrumb trail that you need to do. So the first thing I need to do is come over here and I need to go into the admin center. And you've seen this before. I'm going to click into, I'll start with the default environment, which I used as the production environment. Click on environments, click on default. I need to come back. I'm almost going in a reverse order. So S2S apps, I need to come into here. And here's my S2S apps. Now here's where the hell begins. And you're like, what the heck is going on, right? So you can't delete the user. All you can do is deactivate it, but you can delete it. And I'm going to show you how. So here is the deactivate button for this guy. And yes, I do want to deactivate it. Okay, that's fine. And so now it's deactivated. Come back over to environments. Let's go to the production environment. S2S apps. Find my service principal account, which is this person, guy, entity, whatever. Deactivate him. Okay. All said and done, life's good. Now I want to delete the users. The only way to delete the users is to go into the ultimate backend. To get to the ultimate backend, and I say ultimate because this is really the original backend. You see, the Power Platform is a spinoff off of Dynamics 365 or just Dynamics. So to get to the Dynamics interface for your environment, you don't click on Admin Center. You come down, again, I'm in make.com, click the gear. Instead of going to the Admin Center, you want to click Advanced Settings. The Advanced Settings will take you back to the original Dynamics 365, and you can see it's the old legacy interface. Like, they haven't updated it. There's still stuff in the old legacy interface. Even though we're using the Power Platform, we still have pieces of it not completely branched out. So now what we need to do is come over to here, and I always forget, I think it's under security. And I clicked this little drop arrow to get to that, by the way. I clicked this, and then I clicked under system, I clicked security. I'm trying to get to users, and it's really kludgy the way you get here. All right, so again, it is under security. Click on users. And this is where things get really funky. So it has enabled users right now, but notice this is actually a drop down. This is like a filter scope. So click it so that you can get the list of everything that's there. Come on. It finally loads. And there's no indication it's loading. It's just really weird. So we disabled that other account. So let's set the focus to disabled users, because ultimately this is where we need to be. And sooner or later it'll stop spinning and it'll resolve, and hopefully we'll find our service principal account that we deleted, or rather deactivated, but we're going to delete here on the real back end. Oh, come on. The problem with this is this legacy interface, you don't ever use it that much. And because it's written in .NET, it has to spin up an application instance and IIS, and all this funky stuff has to happen. It's not a problem if it was Dynamics 365 and you're always using the interface. Like, things would be good. I'm going to actually do a hard refresh on the screen. Sometimes this happens and it's notorious, but when you're in it and you're using it for a while, things seem to move along at a nice pace. But when you're going into it for the first time, just like you saw me, it gets really, really, really bad. So I'll choose exit, and I did the hard refresh, so hopefully it'll go back in and we'll be good. All right, enabled users one more time. Come down to disabled users. Where are my disabled? Here it is, right here. Worst case comes to worst case scenario, we just close the browser and go back in, which I may have to do. This is just really annoying. Remember I told you we're about to go through hell? Well, this is, you're now seeing the user experience. And by the way, this isn't unique. This is normal. I mean, this is the way that it is. And this is why I appropriately labeled it hell. And it doesn't matter what computer I use. I've used multiple computers. I always have the same problem every single time. And it's not an environmental thing. It's just because it's not woken up. All right, so come on, advanced settings. repeat the whole process. Let's go to security. See how much faster it is? I got things in my cache. I'll click the drop down. It's still loading. Click the drop down, disabled users. See, boom, it's there. This is what I'm talking about. This always, always, always happens to me. It'll probably happen to you too, which is why I made the video. And if Microsoft, you're watching this, please, 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 please fix this. This is so annoying. So now I'm simply trying to click through, and I click, 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 didn't happen. But anyway, after about 4 times of trying to click in, it finally decided to take. Now here's where the next couple of bugs. We're going to delete it, and you're going to see it doesn't delete it. And we got to delete it twice. So like first time's like a trial run. It shouldn't be, but it is. And then the second time seems to actually delete it. And even though I've done absolutely nothing with these accounts other than just move stuff across the environmental solutions, I'm going to call it a best practice. So one of the things that I do is I make sure that I go through these steps that's there. So if I try to delete this, chances are I'm going to have a problem. And so I'm going to try to do it. Let's see if we get lucky. This would be like the first attempt, because this is probably what you would do if you figured this out on your own. And you can see that it didn't delete. Instead, it's still there, and I don't know why. Oh, I'll try to go ahead and delete it again. And I try delete. And now it says it can't. See, now I get an error. And so now there's an error because of an association. So the association means I need to reassign the records. So I'm going to reassign the records to me, hit OK. And now I should be able to delete it. But again, I delete it, it's going to be a trial run. So I already deleted it once. You saw that it went through the motions. Should have deleted it, but it didn't. Didn't give an error message, but it just, froze or did some stupid thing. Then second time it gave me an error message. And now I've reassigned the records because it said I had an association. And now it says record is unavailable. Okay, download the log file. Okay. Nothing but error, error, error. So it looks like it disabled that user. I'm out. Now I actually disabled that user. It is gone for good. I'm going to close out of here. I'm going to go into the admin center again, because I should now no longer see that disabled user there. It should actually be fully, completely deleted. So again, it's just hit or miss, trial and error. It does not work the way it's supposed to work, and I don't know why. All right, so we're in the environment. We're going to S2S apps, and we should no longer see that user. Okay, no longer. All we have is active users. So that's how you delete a user out of an environment. One more time, we're going to go through. We'll watch the experience and the inconsistency of it. I've already deleted this over here. I need to come over here. I need to change environments. And now that I've changed environments, I'm going to go to advanced settings, and I'm going to go right back to Office 365 again, but I'm going to go for this environment. So each environment has its own URL. So we're going to repeat all the same processes. We're going to come over to administration. Now, I've already been, actually not administration, security. And I've already been here. So see how much faster that this back end is churning and working around? It's like at an account level. So in any event, now that ribbon has finally loaded, which means I should be able to click the drop down and get a result set. And I do. I'm still under enable users. I thought I chose disable users. There it is. Click into the disabled user. Now I am not going to try to delete this. I'm simply going to assume that I have records, and I'm going to just go immediately, because I learned, right? I'm going to go into reassign records just for good measure, just because if there is anything there, I don't want to encounter an error. And even though that I do this and I delete, watch, it won't delete the first time. It'll always delete the second time. And it's, again, a pain in the you-know-what. Okay, almost done with this. Da-da-da-da. It's like watching paint dry, sorry. Wow. Come on. Nothing puts me in a worse mood than having to deal with this kind of stuff. Simple things should just be simple. for crying out loud. I'm leaving this in real time just so that you guys can see the pain. I want to share the pain. Okay, we're going to delete. This is delete attempt number 1. Okay, it didn't delete it. It's still there. I'm going to refresh just for good measure because maybe it's ghosted for whatever reason. Nope, it's still there. So let's click in and delete it for the second time. So predictable, so annoying. So I clicked, nothing happened because the ribbon wasn't loaded in the background. Now the ribbon's loaded. Now I should be able to click in. I mean, part of this, yes, probably is my impatience. I get that, but I just, you know, come on. I got things to do. I shouldn't have to delete shit twice. Enough is enough. All right, second time deleting. Of course, second time's always a charm. I don't know why. And once again, I'm back out and I'm fully deleted. Again, so predictable. So this is how you deal with it, unfortunately, and it is what it is. So just, you know, deal with the pain because unfortunately it's something you're going to have to go through if you try to clean this stuff up. And now you'll notice that that service principal is no longer there. So that is it for this video. That is how you go in reverse and clean up and get rid of the service principal out of Azure and go into the Power Platform for each of the environments and what is needed to actually fully delete it. It looks like an optical illusion that you can't delete the user, and it's probably why Microsoft is going to say, well, it's not intended to delete. If we intended to delete, we would have baked the feature into the Power Platform and we wouldn't have just had disable. We would have had a full delete feature. So I don't know, maybe I'm causing my own problems and maybe it's not necessary to delete, but I don't like clutter. And when I'm doing labs, stuff builds up. So I like the cleanup rather than have all this stuff build up. So if you are like me with a little bit of OCD, you want to clean up your accounts, guys, this is how you do it. Really appreciate your time. That's it for this video, bonus video. We'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.